Hello everyone, this is Ryan from the ProfitTrailer team, also known as RF Radio, on the ProfitTrailer support server on Discord as well as elsewhere on the internet. In this video I'm going to be going over an old holdover from the prior version of ProfitTrailer, and that would be the EMA and SMA cross strategies. I'm going to cover them both here because they are very similar, and the only difference between the two is that one is going to use an exponential moving average and the other uses a simple moving average. So without further ado, let's go ahead and take a look at the wiki and see what EMA and SMA cross are all about. So down here at the bottom, I just click the wiki link right at the bottom of the trading window. And here we go to the ProfitTrailer wiki. And just go ahead and scroll down on the left-hand side till you see the trading submenu and click buy and sell strategies. That will take us to this page here, in which we have right here in the middle of our little familiar matrix here, you have SMA cross and EMA cross. I'm circling the wrong ones there. We're going to start this off with SMA cross and then move on to EMA cross, which for all intents and purposes is going to be exactly the same, just using different moving averages. So as we can see here on this matrix, the SMA cross and EMA cross strategies are used for all forms of buying and selling, both normal and DCA. So let's go ahead and click the link here and see what the article says. So the buy and sell strategy is true when the SMA lines have crossed and spread is larger than or equal to the buy or sell value. Okay, that's subjective. So this, if you're using a positive value, yes, this is true. Okay, what it means is that if you're using a positive buy or sell value, then the SMA lines have crossed and the faster SMA is above the slower SMA, so your spread is going to be equal to or greater than the buy or sell value, whichever one you're using at the time. As it says here in the next paragraph, it's saying the direction of the cross is important. So if the positive buy or sell value is used, the fast SMA line must have crossed above the slow SMA line, just like I described earlier. Now, if a negative buy or sell value is used, the fast SMA line must have crossed below the slower one, and then it's going to be a greater negative spread. So it's going to be that negative number or further negative. Okay, so that's how this works. So the cross must take place within the number of cross candles specified as well. We're going to go and take a look at the indicators config to get a feel for what they're talking about there. So the numbers, valid values are all positive or negative decimal values. Just be cautious though on how big of a spread you're looking at there, because a lot of times when you're looking to buy or sell, usually it's in very close to that cross point. So be cautious of how big of spread you define as your minimum for buying or selling. And for more experienced traders, you probably already know that you're going to use a specific range anyway, so far be it for me to tell you what to do there. With this, if you're using a positive, any positive or negative decimal value, if you go say like a positive 10, just bear in mind what you're looking at there is a 10% difference between the fast SMA or EMA and the slow SMA or EMA. So, and remember, it's always with reference to the slower SMA. So any percent value for the faster SMA or EMA is going, or I'll just say moving average from now. And so for the reference being the slower moving average, it's going to take the percentage, say you say a buy value of +1. What you're really looking at is 1% above the fast moving average must be 1% above the slower moving average in order for that to be true or greater. Okay, and that is 1% of the slow SMA's price above it. Okay, so just remember that. The parameters: SMA cross candles, SMA candle period, SMA fast length, SMA slow length. Remember, for EMA, this first bit here would just be replaced with EMA. These are going to be set in your indicators config. We will take a look at that in just a little bit. Here's the formula if you really want to know how to calculate it, but this is exactly what ProfitTrailer uses to calculate the spread between these, and then it's going to look back a certain number of candles for that cross point. So if we look at the examples here, say we're using an SMA cross candle count of 5, and we have a default A buy value of negative -0.2. So the buy strategy is true when the calculated spread is -2% or larger. Now, when they say larger, what they mean is more negative. So if it's -0.2% or further negative, then this will remain true. Okay? So your fast SMA is lower than your slow SMA in this example. And then the fast SMA must have crossed below the slow SMA within the last 5 candles, excluding the current candle. So remember, the one it's currently on is not counted. It's only looking back the 5 prior candles. And if the cross has not happened within those 5 candles in this example, it will not buy. Okay, it will be a false signal. So the default A buy value limit in this case must be lower than -0.2 if used, which means it's got to be at least -0.21 or further down. Like -0.5 would be good. If you set your buy value limit here at -0.1, it will never buy. Okay, it's going to limit you out before it even reaches your threshold. So just keep in mind that you have to be more negative on buy value limit or more positive on your buy value limit if you're using this for a buying strategy. There's a couple more examples here. Default A buy value, say at 0.05, then buy strategy is true and calculated spread is 0.05% or higher. So your fast SMA is above the slow SMA, and then the fast SMA crossed above the slow SMA within the last 5 candles. Remember, we're referencing this line here. It's the same for all 3 of these. And excluding the current candle. So it is also showing here the default buy value limit must be more than 0.05 if used. Okay. And then you have another one here saying default a sell value of 0.6. So your sell value or your sell strategy is true when calculated spread is 0.6% or larger. So that would be your fast SMA higher than slow SMA, just like the prior example. And the fast SMA crossed above slow SMA within the last 5 candles. Okay, this might be a little tricky. This may only work if you're using a negative trending buy value. Say if you're using your SMA cross for your buy value and SMA cross for sell value. You might not want to do that because it may be very difficult to get them both within the cross, because they're going to use the same cross candle period. It may be very difficult to get them within those same period for buying and selling. So just bear that in mind. You may want to use them either for buying or selling, but not necessarily for both at the same time. So just play with that a little bit with the other strategies to see what works best for you. Also, if we take a look down here, the next article down is EMACROSS. As I said, this is exactly the same as SMACROSS. It just uses an exponential moving average for its basis instead of simple moving averages. So I'm not going to rehash this here. You can read this on your own. You'll find it is almost word for word like SMACROSS. It's just saying EMACROSS instead. So now that we understand what these are somewhat, let's go ahead and take a look at what they look like in your configuration for ProfitTrailer. So if we go up to the bot and go to config and mouse over pairs, we're just going to zoom this in a little bit so we can see a little better what we're doing. So let's go here to default buy settings. So we have here default A buy strategy of EMACROSS and a buy value, which is positive in my case here, and buy value limit. Now what this is doing is actually looking for the cross upward almost as a confirmation that, actually basically as a confirmation that the price is increasing and it's on a bit of a rally. That's what this particular setup is denoting. And by the way, if you're looking to use this setting that I'm demonstrating here as it is set here, I am going to warn you now, this is very untested and use at your own risk. So you have been warned, this is not fully tested. So if you want to test this, by all means go ahead and give it a shot. Put it on a test spot first. Don't do this live as a test. So that's always my caveat with this. If you're going to test anything that I put in a video on here, please run it in test mode to see how successful it might be. And also bear in mind, test mode is best case scenario. So whatever you might see there, cut the performance in half as a good measure, and that would be approximately where you might see on the live bot. Well, I cut it in half just to be safe. So I always err on the side of caution when it comes to the test mode. So now that we see here, this is a positive ranging buy value, and I have a buy value limit that is higher than that. So remember that it has to be higher on the buy value limit if you're using a positive buy value. You notice I've also paired it with another one here, MACD in this case, mainly because when you are buying on the positive trending curve with EMACROSS or SMACROSS, what's going to happen is that you are going to need to pair it with another strategy that is positive ranging, otherwise it might get canceled out. Say if you're using like low BB, it won't work very well because low BB tends to move towards the negative. Okay, it's looking for a much lower value for buying at, whereas EMACROSS in a positive buy value is looking to go up. Okay, it's looking to range upward, not downward, to find its good buy point. And you may have also noticed here I have disabled trailing buy. When moving in a positive trending buy fashion, you don't want to use trailing buy. The logic for trailing buy is set to look for a lower price, find that bottom, and come back up slightly to sell, or sorry, to buy. If you're using it in a positive trending fashion, it will not work because that's the logic that trailing profit is using, not trailing buy. So anytime you're using a positive buy value for EMA and SMA cross, disable your trailing buy, or else it will not work in the range you're looking for. So as I was saying before, I paired this just with the MACD on a positive buy value here to kind of give it a confirmation that yes, it is a positive movement and it's a good buying signal. That's all that I did this for here. And again, test this before you try it out. If you want to use this, go ahead and test it on a test mode bot. Also in selling settings here, so we're looking at sell strategy. This one's looking at negative. Or actually looking for the negative cross. This would be, now I'm running them together here just on test mode for demonstration purposes. Again, this is not tested, and I would not normally do this. Okay, I would not normally put EMACROSS as my sell strategy when I have it as a buy strategy. I would probably change it to something else. I just did it here for demonstration of some possibilities that you could use for a sell value. Now in this case, I have it selling on the downward cross, or just past the downward cross at a negative 0.1% spread. Very minimal spread, just saying, hey, I'm catching that cross and I want to sell right there, because I know at that point it's past peak. Okay, and I also put in the gain here because that is required for EMA and SMA cross. You have to have a gain value specified, and by telling it that I want this gain value, it's going to basically say, okay, I'm looking for it actually being well above where I bought it at. So this gives it the if it is crossing back down, it is past a peak at this point. So at the default sell strategy here, I also just threw MACD in there just to give it a another confirmation signal as well. You could do this paired with the EMA or SMA cross, and it would work fairly well. Or you can just pair it with whatever strategies you feel you would like to try out and go ahead and give it a shot. Notice I also, for this particular setup, I disabled the trailing profit mainly because I don't want it ranging too far down. I want it to just go ahead and buy right at that cross, at the cross down again. Or should I say sell? I want it to sell at the cross down. I keep confusing sell and buy today. This is not good. Anyway, so moving on, we're going to go on over to the DCA. Oh, bear in mind, you could flip-flop these two. You could do a negative buy value, and it's going to look for a more negative trending price. So you don't have to use this particular positive buy value. You can flip to a negative and would have the exact opposite behavior. And same with your sell settings. You flip that to a positive value, and it's going to buy on the max or on the positive spread rather than the negative cross. So that way you can completely reverse the behavior with it as well. So it's kind of a very versatile strategy you can use here. So go over to DCA. This is almost exactly the same, so I'm not going to belabor this too much. We're going to look at the buy setting here real quick. Notice I do have it set very similar to my buy strategy in pairs, except that it is exactly the opposite value. I have it looking for a negative trending price on this one. This is what I was talking about with the pairs. You could just go ahead and do this. When I do a negative trending, I tend to disable my buy value limit because I want it to find that lowest price. And you may prefer to use a buy value limit. I don't when I'm moving towards the negative. I only tend to use it when I'm moving positive, just as a safety. And do remember that with DCA, as with all other strategies, you have to satisfy buy trigger before you can enact your buy strategy. So it's first going to look for this particular buy trigger, or whatever one you're using, the trigger 1, trigger 2, or trigger 3, below the average price of the coin, and then or your average price after multiple buys if you have done so. Then it will factor in the strategy and trailing buy. Sell settings, very much like the pairs, so it's just basically you set up which strategies you wanted to use for selling and your values, and it will go ahead and sell from the DCA log. There's nothing special here under DCA for selling. Just remember that you can set this similar to pairs if you want, or you can set it completely different. It's entirely up to you. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at the indicators real quick here for the SMA and EMA groups. That's this block right here. Notice I am using hour-long candles on this just for a demo. I'm using an EMA fast length of 8 and slow length of 21 and cross candles of 10. I didn't change SMA at all because I'm not using that right now. So these are, I think, default values except for the candle period, if I remember right. Anyway, so what this is denoting here is that within the last, it's going to look back the last 10 candles to see if there was a cross, and it will enact my buy strategy, whether that's a positive or a negative buy or sell value, based on how, whether or not there has been a cross within those prior 10 candles. And that's going to be anytime within the prior 10 hours with this candle period here. So then I have the EMA fast length of 8, slow length of 21. So it's going to be a bit of a fairly fast moving curve, mainly because I'm using very small value for the fast length and a moderate value for the slow length. So now we understand how to set this up in our ProfitTrailer bot. Let's go ahead and take a look at what it looks like. I'm going to quickly zero that. We're going to go take a look at what it looks like on TradingView. So here I have it plotted the exact 8 and 21 exponential moving average for Monero priced in Bitcoin on Bittrex. The reason I'm looking at Monero here is because it's got a lot of good examples of crosses on here. I can give you multiple examples in one here. Now I am using the hour-long candles just like I am on my test bot. So we can go ahead and take a look here. Starting down here at the lower left, you see there's a pretty good positive moving cross right here. This is one example that it could look for anywhere in this little zone. And if we measure out how we do this, is you always measure from your slow EMA towards your fast EMA, and that will give you the spread percentage that ProfitTrailer looks at to determine whether or not it's meeting your buy or sell criteria. In this case, this spread here is 0.47. If we're using the values I have set on my strategy, which was 0.5, this would not yet buy. It would actually look to go for a wider spread somewhere up in this range here. Yep, there we go, 0.6. And then it would try and buy up in this area and hopefully range upward towards this peak, which it could potentially, if it bought right there, could have been around a 4% profit if it was tracking during this period. Now, as long as this particular candle that it would have bought on, it was within 10 candles, you got 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yep, it's within 10 candles of that cross. And it could have done that. That is one example of it buying on a positive moving trend. But this is kind of a gradual one here, so it would have bought a little bit like halfway into that trend. So sometimes these aren't as clear cut as you might imagine. And likewise, on a down cross, like in this little complex here right in the middle of the screen, this could have been a very good downward cross right here, going for a negative buy value. Say if you're trying to buy down, you might want it to look for that cross within prior 5 candles, even on a really steep drop like this. And this particular spread at its widest point, oops, I gotta measure from the slow to the fast one. Remember that, I just about did that backwards for you. That one's like barely 0.9, 0.95. So sometimes these spreads don't get much more or don't even get to a full percentage point. It all depends on what your values are for your EMA, for your fast and slow. Using wider values will get you wider spreads between the two. If you use values that are very close to each other, the spread between the fast and slow EMAs are going to be very, very narrow. So just bear in mind that you can play with the numbers a little bit on the chart here, see what it looks like, and see, is this going to match the buying behavior or selling behavior that I want out of my bot. So always remember, chart your strategy on here and see if it is going to give you the performance that you are looking for. This little cross up here, this is another example of a possible buy zone if you wanted to buy really quick before it got up to this peak here, or even take advantage of this long one. This hindsight is always 20/20, and you can never really predict where the price is going to go, but seeing strong rallies like this are usually pretty good indicators that you may be entering a new Elliott wave complex or something like that, where you might be seeing some very strong rallies, a little bit of pullback, another strong rally right after it. Those are always fun ones to try and catch if you can. I tend to look for these more on a daily time frame just because I'm playing a much longer trading game with this. So some people might like to look at this more on a much narrower candle time frame, like 15 minutes or even 5 minutes. I have seen the strategy used fairly successfully on 5-minute candles, although I've noticed that there seems to be a bit more of a gain potential when you're looking more at like 15 minutes to an hour. So it also depends on the coin. So just be careful when looking at the potential gains that you could see on different coins. They are going to be drastically different between each one, so, or they can be drastically different. They may not necessarily be. So just keep that in mind when you're also charting these, not to look too focused on the same time frame all the time. Just take a look at different candle periods and see what you feel would be, comfortable for you to trade at as well. So now as we've seen EMA here, I'm going to give you a quick overview here of what the simple moving average looks like by comparison. So I'm going to hide these EMAs here, and we look at the simple moving average here. Let me just make sure that that is correct. Yep, it looks to be, except that looks a little bit off. Let me just make sure that this is correct. I've got one curve here that looks a little bit too tight, but that could be correct. That would be why. It would not, there we go, it did not correct. Alright, so now we have here the 8 and 21 for the simple moving average, and this is noticeably different in its curve from the exponential moving average. If we take a look here, if I just plot them back over real quick, you can see the difference. The blues are for the faster one and the purples are for the slow one on each one. I gave them slightly different color codes so you could tell the difference here. And if we look at the simple moving average, you notice that it's a lot wider ranging than the exponential moving average. The EMA tends to hug a little closer to the price action than the simple moving average does, and when looking at them in terms of each other, the fast and slow EMAs tend to be a little tighter curve toward each other as well versus the simple moving average. So by comparison, SMA tends to move a lot more. So that's just what I wanted to give you an idea of what these look like, how they can behave a little bit differently, and give you, sometimes very different buying positions. If you're looking at the chart and looking at specific buy zones, the SMA can give you very different ones from the EMA. So bear in mind that there are pros and cons to using each one, and if you want to use them, go ahead and use them, whichever one you're comfortable working with, and whichever ones match your buy or sell areas. That really is what it's all about, is figuring out which strategies work for what you want to get out of your trading bot. So that's about all I have for the EMA and SMA cross. If you want more information on the indicators themselves, it's just the exponential moving average and simple moving average. You can look them up on investopd.com, stockcharts.com. Any trading site is going to have wealth of information on these two indicators because they are some of the most commonly used indicators in trading. So that's all I have for this video. Go ahead and hit that like button if you like what you see here on this video. Go ahead and please consider subscribing and hit the subscribe button down below. And if you just want to get updates of when we post new videos or content, go ahead and hit the little bell icon right next to the subscribe button. So as always, stay safe, happy trading, and we will see you on the next video. If you need any help with your ProfitTrailer client, please consult the wiki at wiki.profittrailer.com. And if you still have more questions, don't hesitate to join us over on the Discord support server following the link on your screen.